Hello, I'm Ellen.
And I'm Georgia.
And we are the ones that roll.
Welcome to our podcast where we discuss disability and more.
When we're not busy eating popcorn and watching High School Musical. Because we never do that.
Much.
A common question people who are quite close to us often get is how they cope with having somebody with a disability in their lives. So we have made a 2-part episode interviewing members of our family and some of our friends about what it's like for them. And so here is our family.
I think people try to place themselves into my position and make assumptions that having a disabled child is entirely negative. I rang up about something and I said it was for my disabled daughter, who they went, "Oh, that must be so hard for you." I'm going, "No, not really." She's fine. She's just Georgia. She is as she is. I mean, obviously, sometimes it's a bit sad that you can't just go and do the things that others do. It was a serious consideration, but there are a number of reasons why I decided not to go ahead with the termination. One reason was I was already 20 weeks by the time I had the scan, so I would have had to have a full labour and give birth to a baby that would then just die because it wasn't old enough to survive, and I couldn't do that. I'd already felt you moving, you were already my child, and I figured that if anything happened to the children I already had so that they couldn't walk, I wouldn't just walk out on them and go, "Well, tough." So I decided you were my baby, whatever, and if you couldn't walk, you couldn't walk. We spoke to doctors, and with your particular disability, we spoke to doctors from Great Ormond Street, who said that it depended what we wanted for a child and what we considered to be a good quality of life. If we wanted you to be an Olympic sprinter, that was unlikely. And if that was the sole criteria for having a good life, then you wouldn't probably manage that. But on the other hand, if we wanted a child who could respond, love, be loved, have other emotions, and there was no reason why you shouldn't have a perfectly normal quality of life. And then there was obviously concern because we couldn't see a lot of brain, just a lot of fluid on the scans, but the GP said that you couldn't actually gauge the brain function from what was there, so you could turn out to have a perfectly normal brain, which seems to be almost the case. As a baby, I suppose there's not a huge amount of difference. I mean, the obvious difference was we seemed to spend an awful lot of time hanging around hospitals, but as far as actually looking after you when you were little, it wasn't much different, so that wasn't harder. I guess it gets harder as you get older and other normal, for want of a better word, children, and I'm not sure that any of the other three can be described as totally normal, is they become much more independent than you ever have done. To some extent, you've still been dependent on me being here to do certain things, even if it's just to ferry you to Ellen's house. I guess that's the hardest thing. Generally, the time I have to hang around hospitals and health centres. I mean, I think you have to make decisions to do certain things or not do certain things. I didn't go back to work full-time after you were born, whereas I went back to work full-time before that. When Emma was born, I was working part-time because I couldn't quite manage with 3 children and full-time. And then when you came along, it became obvious that I was going to have to spend far too much time at hospitals. So I stopped working altogether for a while. And it has been difficult to pick back up going to work. So I suppose in that respect, I gave up working. But then we've had lots of other good experiences. So, we've met lots of interesting people, haven't we? Mm-hmm. There were people who said that we shouldn't have you and that it was too much and it wasn't fair on the other children and it would be too much work and it would be too much this, too much that. But I'm quite a stubborn, determined person when I've made my mind up about something. So they were people who'd not experienced it who were giving advice. And I find that difficult to take advice from people who have no experience in what they're giving advice in. The support or lack of support causes it to be more chaotic, more emotional. I mean, it is hard because your child doesn't do the things that others of the same age do. Mm-hmm. I guess we tried for you to always be as normal and ordinary as possible. But in turn, I think to some extent that has been to your detriment. I don't think we fought hard enough for Wizzier wheelchairs. We've not gone to charities to fund Wizzy wheelchairs. We've put up with what we've got. We've tried for you to be as normal and ordinary as possible, and I wonder whether that was the right thing as well.
Do you like having an auntie in a wheelchair?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's fun.
Why is having an auntie in a wheelchair fun?
Because when my legs are tired, you can push me. And I also like it that you have a vibrating bed going boom, 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 boom.
That's because it helps me, because it moves. Is there anything that you don't like about having a auntie with a disability?
Mm-mm.
Do you think Georgia being in a wheelchair makes her any different?
Nope.
Would you want Georgia to be any different? Would you like Georgia to be able to walk and be normal?
Nah.
Why not?
Because I like you how you are.
So are we best friends?
Yeah, forever!
You don't immediately introduce yourself and say, oh, hello,
No,
I'm Fiona. By the way, I've got a child with a disability. When people start to get to know me and we start talking about our children and things, they are always really surprised when I say, oh yeah, my daughter's got a disability. I think they're sometimes surprised that I'm out and I'm working and I kind of appear quite normal. I sometimes get the impression that people think of parents with disabled children as perhaps not being able to function normally. I just think I can do it all myself, really. Well, I think saying the best thing about having a child with a disability is a really difficult question to answer, because I think every parent with a child with a disability would rather their child didn't have a disability.
Yeah, but there has to be good things that come from it.
Well, the best thing is that I've got you, isn't it? Isn't it? That's the best thing. When you have a child with a disability, it puts a lot of things into perspective, I think. You learn to be a lot more patient, and I think you become more understanding of all sorts of things that, you know, you realise that actually that there's no such thing as being normal and there's no such thing as being perfect. In some ways, we all have disabilities. We all have things that we can't manage or we can't achieve or we can't do, but that doesn't make us any worse off, really. Some people I still feel very frustrated with. It just seems to be that you're a parent, they're a child, so they're your responsibility to look after them. It's your job, like any other parent. And I think that's particularly so when your child doesn't have learning disabilities. I just seem to think that, you know, if your child just has physical disabilities but intellectually has no problems, that you are kind of left to get on with it. Whereas perhaps if your child has a combination of both, you might get more support. Maybe some of that is because I never really asked for it, because I just thought, well, you're our child and it's our responsibility to...
Did you think maybe being a nurse as well, maybe you thought you...
No, I don't think I thought about that really. When you were born, when we brought you home, you wouldn't expect any, because you were no different from any other child.
Well, I had my ACDC, didn't I?
Yeah, but that wasn't diagnosed till you were 10 months old.
Oh, okay.
So we just took you home and looked after you like we did with Patrick, apart from the fact you had to keep going into hospital for outpatients appointments and things, and then going in for tests and checkups. But no, that wasn't any different. I mean, obviously there was a big difference when you had your injury and then you came home from hospital with your halo jacket on. But even then I wasn't offered really any help. Yeah, we did everything for you. Yeah, your life changes completely when you have a child. It's different because you just can't do things on the spur of the moment when you have a child with a disability. I think you were about a year old when I went back to work, and then you went to nursery. I mean, things didn't kind of change really until you had injured your neck. And then I had more time off work then, obviously, because of you being in your halo jacket and everything. So I had about 18 months off work in all. And that was quite difficult in some ways, because it was, most people I knew were at work, didn't have any family living nearby, so no brothers or sisters living nearby. My mum was quite elderly at the time, so it happened in two stages with you really, because obviously we found out that you had your dwarfism when you were about 10 months old, I think. You've seen lots of people around with dwarfism, well, not personally, but you know, you know. Yeah. So when that was diagnosed, but then we thought, well, you know, you'll just grow up, but you're going to be very small. And then I kind of started reading up a little bit about it, because you don't do it straight away, because you are in shock. And it wasn't having a massive impact on you. You had developmental delays, but you were gradually catching up. But then we obviously had to face, when you hurt your neck,
And that was a different matter altogether, and then we had to face up to the changes with you after that happened, you know, with you being paralysed initially, and it was temporarily, although at the time we thought, you know, that they thought it was going to be permanent. And obviously family and friends were really shocked and upset by that, because it was kind of that one of those moments that you never think's going to happen to you. You treat people as a person, not as a disability. I think perhaps I feel more frustrated than you do.
Thank you for listening to this episode of our podcast.
Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time we do an upload, as we have future podcasts lined up.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter @OnesThatRoll and tweet us any thoughts.
Also, you can leave a comment in the comment section down below, giving us any feedback or even any ideas of future things that you want us to discuss. See you next time.
Bye!